All right. So many of you might know there is actually a presidential election coming up next year, 2024. Uh, it's less than a year away. But what's more interesting is that this year, well, I guess it's not really that interesting. There's a couple people running for president you might recognize. People that will very likely win the party nomination. That's incumbent President Joe Biden for the Democrats and Donald Trump for the Republicans. That's basically a 2020 rematch. And it's a rematch with candidates that a lot of people will vote for, but seemingly don't want. Um, Naturally, this has given rise to a number of viable third party alternatives. Um, we're facing a situation not unlike 1992, I guess you could say. Um, More on that later. First, let me just go over what we're looking at this current moment in November of 2023. Um, Democratic Party candidate most likely to be Joe Biden, unless in some, well, unless he doesn't make it to the primary, or if somehow these other two candidates can make some kind of drastic improvement in their polling and manage to win the primary, which is very unlikely. Same goes for Donald Trump. He's polling at something like 60% in the primary polls for the party. I None of these people, even at this point, if they coalesce behind one person, well, they don't seem to have a chance. So it just seems likely that it's a 2020 rematch between the top two parties. But as far as independent candidates go, things get a little interesting. You've probably heard of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He first launched a run with as part of the Democratic Party, and then decided to run as an independent in October. Uh, he he's somebody who will probably have a pretty high vote share compared to other third party candidates in recent elections. Um, Cornel West is also running. I don't know exactly what that will translate to. It's one of those. I don't know if he has full ballot access, but uh, still, it's another person that will pull votes away from other parties. Maybe he'll have a decent showing. But these are just independent candidates. We haven't even talked about the Libertarian Party or the Green Party. So, point being, there's a good chance that third party candidates or non-Democrat, non-Republican candidates will actually have a sizable vote share in the 2024 election. Um, and that is, well, some people are wondering basically what happens if one candidate doesn't reach 270 electoral votes. What happens? You need 270 to win, right? Well, what if the highest tally is 264? What happens? And that's somebody asked me that the other day, and that's kind of what led me to this topic. It's actually happened before. We'll get to that in a second, but first, contingent elections. Basically, this is what happens if no candidate reaches that 270 threshold. It's happened twice before, once in 1800 and again in 1824, almost 200 years ago. Basically, what happens is the election is decided by the House. Your first thought is, well, you know, whoever's the majority in the House will just vote for the party, but it actually doesn't work like that. Each state's representatives vote as a block. So essentially, um, you know, all of California's representatives, all 30 or so, vote as one vote, basically. Same with Florida. All however many there are in Florida vote as one, and so you end up with 50 votes at the end, and that will essentially decide who wins. Um, that would be very interesting. I don't know exactly how that would play out. Uh, it's also worth noting that because of how or because of when exactly our elections take place and when um, people are sworn into office, technically the Congress elect would actually be making this vote. So the current sitting Congress elected in 2022 wouldn't make this decision if no 2024 candidate got a majority of the electoral votes. It would be the totality of all the candidates elected in that election. So, whoever you vote for representative in 2024 will be part of the voting block that decides that election if it comes to it. So, yeah, that's interesting. But like I said, it happened in the past. So, what happened in 1824? So, in 1824, there were four relatively popular candidates. And as you can see on the screen, it was John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson. This was like a big deal. I remember this is part of what this was part of Andrew Jackson's rise to popularity because he felt thwarted, I guess, and in some ways, I guess you could say he was. As you can see here, he got the highest number of popular votes. Looks like the highest number of delegates too. So he had a plurality. Ended up not getting the election. Henry Clay threw a support behind John Quincy Adams, and when the House voted, they voted. Well, the states, I guess, that went to Henry Clay essentially went to Quincy Adams, and so his 37 delegates on top of the 84, pushed him over the edge. Jackson called it, what did he call it? Corrupt bargain or something like that. And yeah, so that was, it's obviously not an ideal situation when nobody wins the electoral college, which makes you wonder if perhaps, maybe it's time to get rid of it. But I'll just go ahead and jump to current polling, which is basically the next stop of this whole conversation. Lots of boots on this page. So as you can see in this polling data, there's a bunch of different polls over the last 2 months or so. And in these polls, we see Trump, Biden, Kennedy, West, and we see, which is something a lot of people have been saying lately, is that Trump comes out ahead at the end of the day in a lot of these more recent polls. But you can see also that Kennedy's polling pretty high, 15.8%. That's the average poll, but some, as high as 19, 17. They're concerning, or they should be concerning for the other major party candidates. And there's still a question as to who does Kennedy pull his support from more, Democrats or Republicans. There's decent evidence to suggest that his policy views actually are more in line with that of modern day Republicans. However, the Kennedy name is, it's got a lot of history with the Democrats, so it's possible that there might be some that vote for that reason, but we won't know for another year. Even West, though, Cornel West getting a pretty high vote share for, probably, I don't know if he's that well known across the country or not, but so also, again, worth considering between Kennedy and West, we're looking at an average of, let's just say, roughly 20%, a little less than 20%. And that doesn't include the Green Party candidate or the Libertarian candidate. So that's to say an even 20% between all independents and third party candidates. That's a pretty substantial vote share. And it probably leads a lot of people to think, well, crap, Kennedy could carry Massachusetts or, some other place. And what happens if he chips away just enough delegates, and no party can win the electoral college? And well, I honestly, after thinking about it for a while, I never say never, but I don't think any of these third party candidates or independent candidates could actually win a majority of a state's population to get their electoral votes. And I largely kind of look at the 1992 election, as I mentioned earlier. So if you look here, this is some polling data from the months leading up to the 1992 presidential election. Of course, this is Bill Clinton running against incumbent George H.W. Bush. You see Bill Clinton polling pretty low at the beginning, and Ross Perot polling about the same. Of course, by the time of November, you see, well, the polling changes as it always does, but you can see here 14% right before the election. He's polling at 14%, pretty substantial. Ends up getting, according to this page, about roughly 19% of the popular vote. And I'm going to go to the next page, which is what's really important. 19 million people voted for Ross Perot. All right, 19 million people. He got 0 electoral votes. So that's kind of what I would expect to happen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He seems like at the current moment the only person capable of actually making that much of a dent in the popular vote. The Green Party is always going to get their traditional vote share. The Libertarians will always get their base will always turn out to vote for them. I don't think they're going to get that much more than they normally would. And it's completely possible Robert F. Kennedy won't get anyone more than he normally would, or he might not get anyone reaching this level at all. He might not even break a million. Who knows? But point being is that even if he does, odds are he's not getting any electoral votes in the electoral college, which means all he really is doing is pulling votes away from one of the other two candidates. And if anything, that's the only thing that you would want to consider or think about. It's not, what happens if JFK Jr. or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets too many electoral votes. It's what happens if he pulls too many votes out of Michigan or Pennsylvania or Florida and Texas. What will happen to those states if enough people don't vote for one party in particular? He could pull enough votes from Michigan and Pennsylvania to make them go red. Could be enough to make Georgia go blue. I mean, it's one of those things where it depends on how many votes he gets, how much turnout he gets, and whether or not his campaign even lasts that long. It could fizzle out before then, and this whole video will be for nothing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the what will happen with third party candidates in the next election, and a little bit of history as to what happens when no one gets the majority of the electoral votes. And if you have any thoughts, if you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. If you think that any of the independent candidates have a strong enough chance to win a state, let me know. I find all this very interesting, and I'm sure many other people do as well. But yeah, thanks for watching, and well, I'll see you next time.